Other side effects included fatigue and dry mouth, mostly.
Good morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. And so far this morning, we've had some very heavy rain causing some flooding problems for parts of Kansas and Missouri. We'll say more about that coming up in a moment. And also there's a chance for a few big thunderstorms that may likely blossom later this afternoon. We'll have those stories coming up in a moment. But right now it's time for your tropical update. And with all the information regarding Hurricane Darby and the rest of the tropics, here's Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thanks, Cheryl. And she's right. Hurricane Darby's out there in the eastern Pacific, right now heading nowhere. We've got another thing in the Atlantic Ocean that we're keeping an eye on, and that's this little cluster of thunderstorms right here. This was our stratocumulus swirl that we've watched come all the way across the Atlantic over the last several days. And it's interacted with an upper-level low in here, and some thunderstorms have sprung up. And that, whenever we get a cluster of thunderstorms this time of year out there in the Atlantic, we're always watching. Let's look a little bit closer at it. Here it is here. You can see here's Puerto Rico, here's South Florida up here, the Bahamas are in here. And you can see the flow behind it is generally fairly much out of the east, but we have a wave axis in there and a lot of thunderstorm activity. At the surface, there's not much signature, and the pressures are very, very high, on the order of 1,016 to 1,020 millibars. Most of the circulation here is above the surface at 850 millibars. At the present motion, it's going to head towards South Florida, the southeast U.S., and hit there sometime around, late Saturday night, Sunday morning. And right now, with the current conditions the way they are, we don't expect development out of this, but we still have to keep an eye on it. So stay tuned to the Weather Channel on this. But we can probably expect some rain Saturday night and Sunday in the southeastern U.S. Now, we have been monitoring a tropical wave that had moved through the Caribbean. It's since moved over land here, and you can see some of the showers flaring up on the north edge of that. That's associated with the trough with that tropical wave. That trough is going to skirt over the Yucatan and into the southern Gulf of Mexico, and we'll keep an eye on that for you as well. We don't expect much out of that right now, but still some thunderstorms lingering with it, and we were hoping we could get you some thunderstorms up there in Texas out of that little trough, but we'll have to wait and see. It's a little too early to tell. The rest of the Caribbean, you can see, is really very nice weather out there. As we go out into the central Atlantic, we have some pretty good news there. No tropical cyclone development out there. We have a big surge in high pressure out here coming from the mid-latitudes. And that is very stable air, stratocumulus air, and you can see the interface between that and the tropical air along this convergence line of thunder showers. This line will move into the Windward Islands tonight, produce some showers. It may even affect Puerto Rico in the next 12 to 16 hours as well. But it's pretty much killed off anything that was brewing out in here in the low layers, so we're in great shape in the central Atlantic. Now in the eastern Atlantic, we've been seeing a lot of clusters of thunderstorms come off the coast associated with waves. The most recent one was a very strong one that had produced some rain in Dakar. First time this year they had rain. And that's this system right in here. You can still see a lot of thunderstorms there. The low center is very close to the Cape Verde Islands in here, just north of most of the thunderstorm activity. And it's still at least 10 days away from any part of the United States coast. But we'll keep an eye on it for you, and you can follow along with us watching the Tropical Update. Keep in mind, this time of year, early July, mid-July, late July, we don't expect too much in the way of tropical cyclone activity. But starting around August 1st, the frequency of occurrence goes way up, and so we have to keep an eye on that. Now, out in the Pacific, we had been monitoring Tropical Storm Darby just at 11 a.m. This morning, or that's 8 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The Hurricane Center in Miami upgraded Darby to a hurricane, currently 75-mile-per-hour winds. It continues to move off to the west-northwest, though, and that's good news. No threat to the coast directly. We will have some little bit of wave action that comes out of there as swell and affects Baja California, and depending on how big the wind radii get around it, we may see some swell come into Southern California, but nothing on a very large scale or dangerous scale. Here's a picture of Darby right now, and you can see big area of cold cloud tops associated with it there. Still some cirrus outflow to the north and west. And so this is expected to intensify just a little bit and then go into cooler water, more stable water, and have a slow demise. Well, let's get back to that flooding potential over the United States with Cheryl.
And as we take a look at the latest satellite imagery, we see those bright white clouds, very, very ominous looking, very, very distinctive from our satellite picture. And this is indicative of where we've had the heavier downpours this morning. Some locales over parts of Kansas and Missouri have been swamped with literally over 6 inches of rain, and it's still coming down. We have the rain from Kansas City and Olathe, Kansas.
Shortly have a look at today's severe weather outlook, possibility of storms tonight into tomorrow morning. Right now, though, Dr. Steve Lyons is going to tell us what's going on our tropical update.
Well, thanks, Rich. It's tropical update time, and we have quite a few interesting things going on out there. Nothing of an emergency nature, at least in the Atlantic basin. And we can see that on our long loop here. We've been watching, in particular, a tropical wave that's been moving to the west fairly quickly. It's been moving about 20 to 25 miles per hour. It's heading right toward the Bahama Islands now. It's still about 1,000 miles, well, about 800 miles to the east of Florida. And we've been looking to see what's going on there. The latest surface observations indicate not much, though. The pressures still remain high, 1,018 to 1,020 millibars. That's high pressure. And the flow at the surface is relatively straight. It looks like this system is not going to be too much trouble for us. But as long as it's out there, we still have to watch it and keep up to date on it. We have an upper level low in here that will also produce some showers. This thing should arrive somewhere in the vicinity of the Florida area sometime late tomorrow night or early Sunday morning. Now in the Gulf of Mexico, we also have some very, very quiet weather, but we got something also in the Caribbean that's sort of interesting. Now here's that system we have out there. You can see it sort of falling apart a little bit. The thunderstorm activity associated with it is quite a bit weaker than it was, but still pushing to the west fairly quickly. So we should see that produce some interesting weather the next day and a half along the coast. Now, you've been watching a tropical wave that had moved onshore here in the western Caribbean. But we still see some lingering thunderstorms out here, and a lot of showers come into the Yucatan Peninsula and also Belize this afternoon. We'll have to watch this area. Pretty much straight line winds, in other words, no circulation associated with it, but a lot of thunderstorm activity all along the Central America coast there. No real concern tropical development-wise, though. The rest of the Caribbean, you can see here, just a beautiful day, except in the northwest. And in the northeast, in the extreme northeast Caribbean, we've seen some very interesting squall activity out there. You can see that on the image here. Look at the thunderstorms over here. They're heading right toward the Virgin Islands now, and they'll eventually clip Puerto Rico later this evening. A lot of showers in here. This is associated with a big surge of high pressure that's come down out of the subtropical Atlantic Ocean. And you can see that here in these stratocumulus clouds. It's pushing down. It's clearing out the entire Atlantic basin here in the central part. And we're in very good shape here. Nothing developing in here at all. Just some thunderstorms along that interface that is moving across the islands and into Puerto Rico. That should continue to push to the west overnight. So if you're in those areas, and especially in the marine environment, be particularly careful. Now farther out, we've been watching some tropical wave action out here, in particular one that had come off the coast yesterday that was pretty vigorous. A lot of thunderstorms still associated with that system, but no tropical development expected now, and that's typical of this time of year. We don't expect them to develop that far to the east. And speaking of frequencies of tropical cyclones, we're still here in July, and it's usually not very active this time of year across the Atlantic basin. We should see a very rapid climb starting in early August and reaching a peak in early to mid-September. Now we do have a tropical cyclone to look at here in the Pacific, and that is Hurricane Darby. You can see it here. It's been moving to the west-northwest. It's been intensifying over the last 12 hours, and we have a beautiful satellite image of it here in just a second. Currently 90-mile-per-hour winds. It's a Category 2 hurricane, and it's approaching Category 3. The forecast is for it to briefly reach Category 3 and then die out very slowly after that as it entrains some stratocumulus clouds and moves over cooler water.
Time for Storm Watch at the Weather Channel, where each and every hour, at about 10 minutes till the hour, we'll look across the entire country and find the most active areas of stormy weather that could be affecting you tonight. We'll discuss those in great detail, and we'll also begin with a look at the tropics in our tropical update. Let's look at a number of areas of interest, including a big batch of cloudiness that by sometime late on Saturday might be potentially providing a little moisture to Florida, maybe coastal Georgia, too, if it can hold together long enough. Also look at a big batch of storminess. Area of low pressure close to the surface there, lower level low pressure that's keeping a lot of wet weather around Belize. Let's look at these areas one step at a time, including one source of waves, Africa, momentarily. We can't see a lot of storminess, just general storminess across the southeastern U.S. Again, this is not of a tropical nature out over water. But right there, one area we've been watching for a number of days, a big elongated area of storminess has been hanging out south of Cuba for a number of days. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means it's been there for some time, and portions of it have moved ashore and been bringing about some wet weather. Not out of the question, some batch of the storminess may continue to drift northward and could be into portions of the Gulf of Mexico to maybe bring about some more wet weather. We'll continue to watch it, but again, just now a big batch of storminess and calling the coast of Belize. Maybe Cozumel could see a bit of this as well. We have been watching a bit of a wave here and some associated convection or storminess with it, and things have actually been falling apart with it, though, as you can see pretty readily from the satellite vantage point. This is an infrared satellite image. You take the coldest cloud tops, and those are assigned different colors when it's infrared. They would take the picture from outer space, the convection, the storminess, the bubbling nature of the storms. The higher the cloud tops, those usually see the reddish or the orangish shades, and some of the colder cloud tops a bit beneath that are usually assigned kind of a blue shade. But do notice this is weakening just a bit. There's a kind of the leading edge of a strong surge in the trade winds. That's where the wave is actually lying now, surrounded by a big area of high pressure kind of on the edge of that too. Things appear to be fading a bit with this. It could provide some moisture into the Bahamas and eventually toward the coast of Florida, maybe coastal Georgia, maybe the next 24 to 48 hours. So we'll monitor this area again, but right now it is fading away pretty rapidly, unfortunately. Elsewhere, we do have other spots of convection. Include some more storminess being watched along, well, not too far from South America, along the coast here. Sometimes the year we call it Cape Verde season. Now, we're not really into what the official Cape Verde season is, but it's actually becoming fairly active already. This is a source region for tropical waves that move along, shove off the coast here, and often can make the long trek across the Atlantic. Sometimes the year, though, conditions are not really favorable for that to happen. If you have low pressure aloft, that area of low pressure that's way up there won't so much affect the steering of which way the wave is moving, but what it will do is it will create either a really good or a bad spot for a tropical wave to sustain itself. In other words, it will rip up or shear the thing apart. You have to have high pressure aloft to create kind of a big stable dome for the area of low pressure moving out across the water to find a kind of a safe place to continue to intensify. Again, there's the source region of the waves here, Western Africa, where some come from, Cape Verde Islands, already becoming very active fairly early this year. Now, this is not the most active time of tropical activity as far as hurricanes occurring over the last 100 years. July, not the most active month, a little more active toward August, into September. We usually peak around September 10th with the most hurricane activity around the world, around our northern hemisphere, around the Atlantic, at least anyway. In the Pacific now, so we're talking about the Atlantic. We talked about the one particular area being watched here, also the wave that could maybe bring some wet relief into Florida, but it's falling apart pretty fast. Those are the two main areas we're watching. In the Pacific, though, Hurricane Darby, currently moving to the west-northwest at 12 miles an hour. Its current position, too, is 775 miles, a little bit stronger as we go into our Saturday. Again, that's its present position, and not making a lot of further movement again toward land. As it moves west-northwest, that means that gradually it is moving further away. Of course, that would be the good news as that starts to head on. Still, we'll continue to watch this area where it may actually intensify, and not out of the question we could see it become just a little bit stronger of a tropical system as we go on through the next